Greetings, urban farmers, gardeners, and healthy food visionaries. Greg Peterson here, and welcome to the 281st episode of the Urban Farm Podcast, where 3 days a week we work together educating and inspiring you to become part of your food revolution. Growing plants that thrive in your yard is a lot easier than you think. It starts with saving your own seeds and letting them remember what they already learned. Just text SEEDS to 33444 or visit iwanttosaveseeds.com and you will receive our free webinar about why seeds matter, why saving them is easy, and how to save your own. Today on our podcast, we have someone who has great ideas for making gardening easier. We're talking to Shawna Coronado about great gardening hacks. Shawna is an author, columnist, blogger, photographer, and spokesperson for organic gardening, green lifestyle living, and culinary preparation, as well as an avid campaigner for social good. Her goal in authoring gardening and green lifestyle books is to promote a world initiative to encourage healthy and sustainable living. Shawna was featured as a Chicago Tribune Remarkable Woman and speaks internationally on building community, simple urban garden living, and green lifestyle tips for the everyday person. Welcome to the show today, Shawna.
Hey, thanks for having me, Greg. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, you bet. You bet. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at today?
You know, the real story starts back in Indiana. I grew up on a farm in Indiana. And so from the time I was very little, I was truly exposed to people who have a passion for growing. You know, they all were growing. We were growing for our livelihoods, but we're also growing tomatoes and watermelon and all those things. My grandparents used to can, so we were all connected with food in one form or another. And one of the things that we did every Sunday was have a classic Sunday dinner.
Nice.
And so I was truly raised in that environment of always having a Sunday dinner. My family is crazy. That's a whole nother story. But that Sunday dinner was triggered by the environment with which we lived and what we grew. And I think still to this day, that sticks with me as being something that's absolutely critical for a human being, to be connected to the earth, to be connected to each other. Yeah. So I moved up to Chicago. And when I moved up to Chicago, I spent many, many years without any exposure whatsoever to a garden or even a park. Like I just went to work and came home and lived in the cement. And that's what I did. And so I became sick and I had to take over a dozen prescriptions a day. I had severe allergies, severe bronchitis and asthma and all of these problems. And at around that time, my boss took me into her office and said, I need you to work more hours. And I was already working about 60 hours a week.
Wow.
And I hated my job. Mm-hmm. And very sad story right there. And she says, if you don't work more hours, then you're fired. And I'm like, well, I quit. I can't do this. So as I quit, you're fired. We're out of here. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I came home crying, and we have in our family, the telephone telegraph. My mother-in-law was over at my house before I hit the front door to make sure I was okay. And when she came over, she said, you really love that gardening thing. Why don't you do something you love? And then you'll be happy for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And that was the best advice I've ever received. And from that point on, I threw my entire self into gardening. I became a local landscape designer. And at the end of that summer, instead of taking, dozens of prescriptions a day, I was taking 2 prescriptions a day. And my life had been changed forever. It was truly a life-changing, epic summer.
Yeah.
Epic. Yeah. It was amazing. And so at the end of the summer, I realized that I was onto something, so I wrote a book. And my first book I self-published, and it was then that I decided I had to go on social media in order to sell the book. Now, here's the trick. I discovered that going online and having a blog and having all that I now have has absolutely nothing to do with selling a book. Instead,
Right.
it has everything to do with making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And that changed my life again. I now feel that the purpose of my being, of my existence, is to inspire others to do good, to feel better, to live with less chronic pain, to eat healthier. This is what this is all about. And this is what brought me to this point.
Wow. Well, you and I have very similar paths. Uh, Although I never entered the corporate world,
Mm.
my first business I started when I was 15, so I've been self-employed all along the way. But the reason that I do what I do is I like to educate people on the importance of what you put in your body and what you put on your body and how it impacts our long-term health. And it sounds like you're going down a similar path.
Oh, I'm there. I'm there. And one quick thing, 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with severe degenerative osteoarthritis of the spine.
Whoa.
It's from the top of my spine down to the base. And I went from planting 3,000 vegetables a year in my front lawn veggie garden to devastation, where I was
Mm,
really horrified. I went on a diet that is strongly vegetable, although I do eat meats and chicken and fish,
right?
but it's no dairy, no grains, and no sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the next big transformation that happened because
Yeah.
now I am 85% pain free compared to what I was before. I
Wow.
mean, it significant. I could barely walk when I was diagnosed,
Mm-hmm.
and now I feel like $1,000,000. I totally reinvented myself. And those last two prescriptions that I was taking, one was for high blood pressure. Those are all gone. I no
Yep.
longer have to take prescription meds.
Right.
And so my answer to people when they ask me, why am I doing this? Why the gardening aspect as well as food, but really gardening? And the answer is because food is the cure. And
Yes.
food has been the cure for me. And I've lived the experience. And I'm here to help others to do the same
Yeah.
thing.
Well, and what we've found is that the grains in our life, and I know everybody out there, you're going to groan when I say this, but we
Hmm.
have to get rid of the grains because they're so highly polluted, they're so highly hybridized that they are a significant negative impact in our life.
Yes, exactly. And getting rid of grains that first, like the first 4 days, I went to a nutritionist,
Mm-hmm.
and I love her, by the way. She and I are very good friends now. But that first week, I was busy telling her that she was crazy and that this would never work for me and that,
Right.
I was in denial. And at one point, I actually sent her an email and I said, I hate this and I hate you and I hate the world. And I was in so much pain, that I
I'm
couldn't think
sorry.
straight. No, no, because the good news is 4 days into the diet, only 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
I had about 40% less pain. And I sent her an apology letter. Oh my gosh, I just got goosebumps thinking about it. I sent her an email and said, I'm so sorry. You
Right.
were right. I was wrong. And this is amazing. I
Yeah.
can't even believe it.
Yeah.
I'm going to get rid of my meds. I just knew it. And it took me another 4 weeks before the rest of my prescriptions disappeared. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to use them anymore.
Right.
And now, like I said, 85% less pain. When I have a bad day, I don't go out and do very heavy physical labor in the garden. I
Right.
know that a bad day it's okay, by the way, to have a bad day.
Uh-huh.
It's a winter day or it's whatever it is. It's cold out that usually triggers it. And I'll say, okay, I'm done for the day. I just call it a day and I'm done. And
Yeah.
I think that's important for us to do that, both if you're ill with a chronic condition or you have chronic pain, but also in the real world, when you're just a normal, regular person and you're having a bad day, it's okay to have one. Just
Right.
just dump and run.
And yeah,
Tomorrow will be better.
give yourself
Yeah.
permission to take the day off so that it doesn't manifest into something else like high blood pressure or something
Yes.
worse.
Yes, and that's the success. Like the garden techniques that I use are all based on, and this is important, on my not being educated traditionally in horticulture. I am not a horticulturist. And so I break all the rules. I've learned where
Yay.
where to take a break when other people think you should keep working.
Yeah.
I think that that's part of the secret of the success for my personal garden.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, let's talk about your book. I have in the past few years fallen in love with garden hacks, and I regularly share them. I spoke in front of about 100 people just last night at one of our local bookstores, and I'm always plugging in garden hacks. And so when I got your book, I got really excited. It's 101 organic gardening hacks, eco-friendly solutions to improve any garden. And it's like, I'm starting to thumb through this and wow, cool. Tell us about the book and how it came to be.
I will. The book is really just clever ways to save money in the garden and to make gardening easier. And how it happened was I'm very good friends with my editor at Cool Springs Press, which is a division of Quarto Publishing. And he's like, he called me and he's like, I want to do a hack book. I know this will take you about a year to put together. I'm like, no, I have all the hacks right now. And he's like,
nice.
What do you mean? I'm like, are you kidding me? I have been hacking since I began gardening in my own yard. This is ways to save money, because when I started, I didn't have any money. And so I learned smart things. For example, how do you line your pathways? Well, I never had the ability to go out and buy expensive stone and brick and things like that. So I started using old wine bottles, and I would flip a wine bottle upside down and line my pathways with it,
Whoa.
which in turn is super cool. And by the way, living in Chicago, we have temperatures from 100 degrees all the way down to minus 30. And in 7 years, I've only had one wine bottle break. And so they're very strong and work remarkably well for the task. Plus, if you do not cement them in, they're not permanent. So if you have a homeowners association or something like that you have to deal with, this is easy. You can get past the rules because it's a non-permanent situation.
Right.
And so it's a great hack, and you can
brilliant.
do it with other bottles. Like if you're a beer drinker, you could do it with beer bottles instead.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, tell me another one. I mean, there's only 101 of them here, so give me another one.
Right, we have a lot. I think the other one, and this is a lot of organic gardeners know about this one. If you go to the grocery store and you go to the spud department to go to the potatoes, that's the potatoes you should use for seed stock. The reason why I go to Whole Foods and buy me some organic potatoes, because the other potatoes in the traditional grocery stores have been sprayed with a chemical which prevents them from seeding, prevents them from growing. So if you go and you get a bag of organic potatoes, you can cut them up where the eyes are, so you make sure that there's an eye on each cut, and you just throw them in the soil, and you can grow your own potatoes. It's much cheaper than seed potatoes when you go to the garden center, and you can buy tremendously cool varieties, because a lot of times I'll find something really neat at the Whole Foods as an example. It could be any store that's really selling organic potatoes. So purple potatoes, for instance, and that sort of thing. So really, really cool idea there. So one of the fun things that I do is using practical landscape ideas, finding reclaimed materials and importing it into your backyard.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law always has an extra brick somewhere and is always bringing me extra bricks, and I create that into floating patios. So an example of that is you lay down a layer of the black fabric that's a landscape fabric, and then you float bricks and pebbles over the top of that. And then if you ever need to pull it up, you can. But the trick with this is, how do you dig into an area that has maple tree roots?
Oh my gosh, of course.
I can't. And so this is a solution for that sort of thing. But I also use recycled materials to build art. So across my garden, all over the place, you'll see recycled art, and it's things I've dug out of the trash. Yes, I stop, and I'm a trash digger, I confess. And I definitely am.
Hey, so am I. There's lots of great stuff out there.
Old wall decorations, wreaths, iron pieces, or baskets, you can spray paint them, you can throw them up on the fence, and it's really cute. I mean, it's just adorable, and it's a great way to decorate your garden.
Yeah. Well, I have literally tons, probably 10 or 15 tons of what we call urbanite in my backyard. It's broken up sidewalk.
Wow, that is an amazing idea.
Yeah, and it's free. I always get funny looks when I drive up to a work site somewhere and I say, "Can I haul some of that, that pile of concrete away?" In fact, that one day I had a guy look at me and he said, "Oh, you're Greg Peterson, aren't you, from the Urban Farm? I know what you're going to do with that."
That's so funny. And I've done the same thing. All the construction sites in the area know me
Yeah, exactly.
because I show up. And what my favorite thing to ask for, in the Illinois region, we have rock. And, and it's small rock. We also have giant rocks, but I mean,
Uh-huh.
small rock that's, I would say 12 inches to 18 inches around.
Mhm.
And so it's heavy to lift, but it's not, it's non-permanent again. So I can pick it up. I use it to line all my garden beds with. And that's the secret, is you must ask permission, because the day that you don't ask permission is the day the police officer shows up to escort you off the premises.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, and asking for the permission, though, it creates great bonds. It creates this sense of community. It's like, oh my gosh, you're going to take my throwaway and you're going to make it into something?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I love that. I love it.
So, I'm on page 71 of your book, Hack Your Own DIY Seed Tape. Tell us about that.
Yes, that's a great one. Okay, so what you do is you roll out an unbleached toilet paper sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get those, these days you can get them at Walmart. You can get it at any department store. And then you mix flour and water together to make homemade glue, just like you did back in the days when you were a little kid in elementary
right.
school. And you get a toothpick and you dip the toothpick in the glue, and then you touch it to a seed, and then you wipe that on in the middle of the toilet paper roll, the strip that you've rolled out. And then you fold it over. You do this about it depends on how far the plants need to grow. So
Right.
if they're, a radish, you do it every inch or so, very close together.
Mm-hmm.
But for a sunflower, you do it every foot or so, so that it's wider. And then you fold it over once it's dried, and you roll it up and you save it until it's planting time. You roll it out, you water it, and shebang, the toilet paper disintegrates.
Yep.
And the seed starts growing. It just pops up the same as any old seed. I love it. It's super easy to make your own seed tape.
Nice. And why does one need seed tape?
You don't. But what I found is a lot of new gardeners especially are confused about, how far apart do I put? This gives you an advantage because you don't have to thin.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but when I thin my radishes and carrots, I feel like I'm killing them. And I am. I feel very distraught over it. And my mother-in-law says she can't grow radishes anymore because she's so upset over having to thin the herd.
Yeah.
I know.
That's great. I love that hack. So one of the things I noticed throughout your book is you love the art piece of this. Mm-hmm. And there are some really cool... I'm on page 111. It's your Hack 75, Upcycle Old Furnishings. Mm-hmm. And you're doing this with old tools. Tell us about that component of this.
I'll tell you how this all started. Like, back in the day, there was no internet. So there was no Pinterest. So I didn't have it. I was in my first year of doing landscape design. Because remember, my mother-in-law said, hey, do what you love and you will be happy. And so I started doing this landscape design, and I was at a client's house, and he gave me that love seat, which is an old wicker love seat that was rotted and falling apart.
Right.
And he had set it out on the corner for the trash man to get it. And I'm like, I want to take it home. He's like, you're crazy. What are you going to do with that? And as soon as I got home, I transformed it into a flower pot. And that was the beginning of all the different things that I've transformed into flower pots over the years. But wicker and rattan is particularly effective at this because it is not a permanent. Rattan doesn't last forever. And particularly in the Midwest with winters, if it's sitting out, it's going to rot. It is. So expect it. And then when it starts to rot off, paint it up, toss some plants in the bottom, and there you go. What I usually do is line it with rabbit fencing, and then
Oh, right.
sphagnum moss, and then soil.
Hmm.
And so it holds the soil in that way, and is really effective. Now, this particular chair, I mean, I kept it another 4 years. Outside through the winters, through everything. And then at one point or another, it was just simply falling apart. And then what I do is when something is ready to go, I post it up on Facebook and say, if anyone local would like to have this, come pick it up. And they do every
Every
single
time. I know. Isn't that
every time.
amazing?
It is every single time. Come right over and they
Yeah.
pick it up.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, tell us about your other books. You have, what, 5 or 6 of them?
I do. I just finished my 6th book, which will be The Wellness Garden, which is taking all
Oh.
that stuff that happened with my osteoarthritis and turning it into inspiration. So I talk about diet and exercise outside in the garden, yoga, therapeutic gardening, all of that. It's really a combination of diet and garden. And that is coming out. It's out right now on Amazon. So it's my latest book. So you can go right now and go get The Wellness Garden in pre-sales.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have my previous book, Before 101, is Grow a Living Wall, Create Vertical Gardens with Purpose. And Grow a Living Wall is just what it says. I'm teaching the everyday person how you can plant more than 50 plants in less than a square foot.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
it is really effective. And I use soil. There is one garden in the book that's hydroponic, but everything else is soil. And here's how I figured that out. I was standing in a garden center. I'm always standing in a garden center.
Yeah, we love those.
Always. And I was holding a window box that was 24 inches by 7 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized it's like 1.16 square feet. It's a square foot. And when you think about square foot gardening, and biointensive planting, which is really what square foot gardening is.
Right.
This is an adaptation of that. And if you could plant 5 window boxes on top of one another, on a wall, then you would have a very inexpensive living wall.
Right.
And the more I investigated it, the more I wanted to write a book. And it's been a bestseller because it enables people that live in an urban environment to really grow in small spaces.
Right.
And the other couple books that I have out by the publisher are state books, How to Grow in Indiana, How to Grow in Illinois. They're very basic books on planting and growing. But my passion has been the last 3 books I have because they're very creative.
Mm-hmm.
I do all my own photography. So most of the books photographed by me, so on my travels, I'm always shooting everywhere I go. And they've been a real passion for me.
Yay. So, all right, on a technical piece for taking your own photographs, what kind of camera do you have? Because I know the iPhone isn't the best thing to be shooting pictures on.
Well, you would be surprised because
Really?
if you go to my Instagram page,
Mm-hmm.
all of my photos, 98% of them are done with my cell phone. So I would love for you guys to go out to Shawna Coronado on Instagram and see what you see. Those are all cell phone photos. But the photographs that I take for my books and for my blog is I have a Nikon D5200, and I joke all the time with my husband that if he weren't in my life, I would marry my camera because I truly love it with all my heart, and I carry it everywhere. And when I was a kid, I had this really mean teacher who was an English teacher who was the hardest woman. I mean, I would go home crying from high school because she was so mean. And now I know why. She saw something and she wanted me to learn. And I learned that from her. And then I learned photography really from my own failure. I failed so much at taking a picture that eventually I became successful. So I've never taken a class, all about learning how to compose a picture and have it be impactful.
Mm-hmm. Wow, how cool is that? Well, I'm a lifelong learner too. It's something that once it gets into us, I think it just doesn't go away.
That's so true, my goodness.
Yeah.
There's another thing in my personal life. I think we're all triggered by something to have this drive and this passion. My father died when he was 46 years old
Oh my gosh.
of pancreatic cancer, and I was 12 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it left a lasting impression on me because I was convinced that I would die when I was 46 years old. I knew that it would happen. So I hit 46 years old and I survived and I didn't die.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I had this personal drive every year. I have after the age of 46 in my mind is a bonus year. Yes. So if you have a bonus year, are you going to sit around and waste it, or are you going to do something big to inspire as many people as you can to change the world, to help other people? I want to have every year be one of those years.
Yeah.
And so that's how I'm living.
Yeah, how incredible is that? I call them, so my entire team knows that I play the what if game. And it goes like this. Oh my gosh, what if we did this week? Because I'm always coming up with, cool things to do in the world that change people's perspective and change people's lives. And honestly, recently I had a health scare that, it was one of those, oh my gosh, my life could be over. I'm fine, everybody. Everything's just fine. But
I'm sorry.
Thanks. But it opened my eyes to really where I had to finally get to was, okay, am I living every day or am I dying every day?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. This is exactly it. And when you change your attitude, you hear these power speakers are always out there. You must change your attitude. You must be positive. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, But the truth is that when you do finally have something that hits you in your gut and you change your attitude and your mindset, every day I wake up is better than it was.
Yeah.
So other people are like looking back at their lives saying the best time in my life when I was in my early 20s, I had my friends, I was out partying, I did all this stuff. For me, the best time of my life is right now.
Right now. Absolutely. In fact, I said to my sweetie Heidi the other day, there was a group of young people at a restaurant, and I looked at her and I said, you know what? I so love our life right now. I wouldn't go back there for anything.
Nothing. I don't want to go back. I only want to move forward.
Right.
And when I was in high school, I was very unpopular. And I think it's because I was very quirky, like, an independent thinker. And when you're in high school, that's unpopular. That's not cool.
Welcome to my world, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. I'm such a nerd. I'm still a Star Trek nerd, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
But the thing is that now at my age now, adulting has been fantastic because I'm really independent thinker, do my own thing, break the rules, try new stuff. And when you do that, it's more satisfactory than being a sheep.
Right.
And doing what everyone else tells you to do.
Yeah.
And so this has been really, really a fun time in my life. But more importantly than that, I think teaching people how to do good things in their lives makes my heart feel good.
Yeah, exactly. I was just sitting with that in that moment, and it's like, oh yeah, makes my heart feel good too.
Awesome.
So I want you to think back. I'm going to throw a curveball at you because you told me I could before we started recording. I want you to think back in your life and just come up with that one epic gardening moment and share about that.
Either my biggest failure or my biggest success.
We're gonna get that in a minute. We'll get there in a minute. But
epic gardening moment. I think what happened was, wow, you did throw a curve at me. I'll tell you what, I was out behind my fence. Behind my fence is on right-of-way property. And by the way, if you search on YouTube, WGN and Shawna Coronado, you'll see how my city fined me for this garden. And there was quite a lot of drama about it. And they put me on the 10 o'clock news over what I called garden tax.
Nice.
Garden. I know. But that was very interesting because I'm out working back there one day and these ladies walk past me, and sometimes ladies are a little bit judgy, and they're walking past, and I overhear them talking, and the one woman says, "That's that Shawna lady." And the other one says, "Yeah, she's crazy." And they walk past, and I'm out there weeding and working in the garden, and it hurt my feelings. But it also, something happened inside me. I became more driven than ever. I'm like, I'm going to show them
Yeah.
that this garden is going to help our community. And that was like my big time where I had this changeover and did something crazy that, so then I started gardening everywhere. I gardened behind the fence. I gardened on my side of the house. I gardened on the other side. I gardened on my neighbor's yard. And then I ripped out
Nice.
it was crazy. I ripped out the front lawn. And if you go to my website, you can see pictures of that by looking up front lawn vegetable garden. And I'll tell you, the first year, it was really a rough thing. And then the next year I planted in a special design that from outer space would look like a sunrise. I mean, I had this whole artistic
Wow.
vision. And I planted really in that biointensive planting technique where you plant everything very closely together, no-till garden. And I did this with my front yard. And so then every year my front yard was inspiration for my neighbors, and I donated 500 pounds of food to my local food pantry. So that day out behind the fence when I really cried over how it hurt me that people think that I'm crazy because I want to make a difference for others.
Yeah.
It changed my life in a lot of ways because I became driven then, to really make it good and make it worthwhile, not just for me, but for everyone else around me.
Yeah. And thank you so much for doing that and making a stand for that. That's really important. And these days, in fact, I'll tell you a quick story. I'm in my office right now and I'm looking up on a wall and I have a magazine cover that I was on in 2007. And the title on it is Green Extreme. Quirky neighbors growing food in their front and backyard. Would you want to be his neighbor? That's essentially what the message was. And it was a positive-ish article, but they were poking fun at me in 2007. Here we are 10 years later. I'm the cool guy on the block. Literally, my neighbors are sitting there looking at what I'm doing, starting to mimic it a little bit. Recently, one of my neighbors had somebody come up to them and say, have you heard of that urban farm place? She said to this friend, and she kind of puffed up and got happy, and she said, yeah, he's my neighbor. So all of a sudden, fast forward 10 years, and we're the cool guys and gals on the block now.
It was so hard at first. I went to conventions and events, where there were other gardener writers and gardeners, and I really got a lot of criticism. But I believed in two things. I believed in my vision that you don't have to be a horticulturist to grow a magnificent garden.
Right. And
I still need horticulturists. We all do, by the way, because they also help us to learn how to grow. But you don't have to be one yourself to have success. And the other thing was, social media is where it's at. I have 500,000 followers now, and my life
is that all?
Never the same. I know. Is that all? And
Wow.
it's been an amazing experience. And that I remember being a child and being really lonely because I didn't have friends. And now I have so many people who are on board with what we believe of, doing good for others. And it's just a beautiful experience. And other people hate social media, but I love it. I really feel this is where I need to be. And I like it a lot.
Yay. Well, thank you for that story. That is exactly what I was looking for. That's an epic moment. So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you learned from it.
Oh, okay. I have a great failure. It's just in the garden growing a plant. I cannot grow an artichoke to save my life.
Oh, man.
I have tried a dozen different times. I tried again this year. They're either covered in mites. This year I had a lot of aphids, and then it was invaded by ants. That's a common thing to happen with artichokes, where aphids will come, then the ants come because they want the dew from the. So it's this whole thing going on. And here's what I learned from this huge failure that I can't grow. If there's a plant in your garden that you can't seem to grow well, throw them in the compost bin and give up. You can move on to another vegetable.
Right.
I think I'm going to try to grow that hydrangea. I'm going to try again this year. And then last year was a failure. No, I give you permission to just give up on that plant and say, you know what? I don't have luck with artichokes. Let's move on. And it's a smart move, because was it Einstein that said, why keep doing the same thing over and over again? and expecting a different result, just give up on it. It's okay.
Yeah, that's what we call insanity, by the way. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can't grow, interestingly enough, I can't grow watermelons for the life of me. And I've been growing food here in Phoenix for over 40 years. And that's one of the things I just gave up on it.
It's not working. There you go.
Right. So there you have it. You have both of our permissions. You have Shawna's permission and my permission. If you can't grow something, stop. Don't do it anymore.
Give her up. Yeah.
What do you consider your biggest success?
Clearly, the biggest success of my life, besides my family, of course, is building an online business that helps inspire people to live well. Yeah. This is what I think I am put here on earth to do. And it sounded, when I first started, if I had known how much hard work that this really is to write books, to do all the social media, to have this business, I never would have stuck with it.
Right.
Because, my God, I work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. But it has been the best roller coaster ride of my life. And of course, it begins and ends with growing. Yeah. And that makes my heart feel good.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what drives you?
We mentioned it a bit earlier. I think that knowing that every year is a bonus year, and that, a lot of people are like, what drives me is religion, and I want to be good because somebody tells me to be good. I don't have any of those strong feelings. I feel instead that inherently we should all just be good to one another, that it's not about getting a reward for it. It's about what we should do, which I think is the right thing to do. Yeah. And so teaching my children that making a difference for people and being good in your heart, because that's what's good for you emotionally, is really important. So I'd say that, that drives me, making a difference for other people.
Yeah. Beautiful. So if you could recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be and why?
Your one book recommendation thing. That was so important. I'm going to give you two books because I had same topic. Okay. There's two women that have written magnificent books that are out this year. One is called Good Bug, Bad Bug by Jessica Walliser. And I had the distinct privilege of speaking with her at an event not too long ago where she talks about bug sex. Oh my God, is it the best speech ever? And she really she really talks about how we need to leave our bugs alone and let the circle of life really work. Yeah. And so she's much a proponent of organic growing and definitely is a fascinating person who's fixed on bugs. And my next topic is also a bug. The next book is The Monarch, Saving Our Most Beloved Butterfly by Kylie Baumley. Kylie is perhaps the nicest person on earth. She's a sweetheart. Yeah, no, she really is so sweet, so nice. But the other thing is she has a passion to save the monarch, and she lives in Ohio. She tracks the monarch. So year after year, she was my monarch expert before she ever wrote a book. She would understand monarch questions. If you follow her on Facebook, for instance, she shows these magnificent pictures of monarch eggs, which are tiny, tiny little things, and tells people how they can find them, how you can grow them. And when I said I had discovered a whole bunch of caterpillars on my dill and for the swallowtail. And when I found them, she was horrified that I didn't want to take the time to collect them and then have them do all their magic, like inside the house. So I could see them and I'm like, I don't have time. And she's like, my God, it called me up, So the point being is that this book is singularly one of the best guides to saving the monarch I've ever seen. Wow. I really highly recommend it. Yeah, she's wonderful.
And what was her name again?
Kylie Baumley, Baumle.
Perfect. So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
My best advice is to stop with the perfection. When I first went on this diet, I had already been on a diet for years and years and years, eating 1,200 calories a day because I wanted to be perfect, because society says I need to be thin and svelte and beautiful, right?
Yeah.
The American image that the media puts on us is that we have to be perfect. It's also the same image that is reflected in our gardens. You watch HGTV, which by the way is losing the G, which makes me a little concerned. I want more garden shows.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
But if you watch some of the garden shows, they're really telling you you have to be perfect. And this is what a perfect lawn looks like. And this is what a perfect garden looks like. And what I'm saying to you is drop the perfection, accept your garden, yourself, and nature for what it is. You are beautiful just the way you are. And so is your garden.
Well, that's a beautiful place to conclude today. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us on the show today, Shawna.
I loved it, and I can't wait to be a part of your page. So you have to link me in on all this fun.
Absolutely, we can do that. And it sounds like we can probably do this again a few times because there's plenty to talk about.
Indeed, there is. Thanks, Greg, for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So how can our listeners get a hold of you?
The best way is to go to my website, shawnacoronado.com. It's just my name. And you can go there. You can contact me. There's a contact category. You can look at the About page and learn more about where you can find me. And I have a speaking agenda there. So if you want to see me speaking around the nation, you can click on that and you can find more. There's also, besides the blog, which has lots and lots of information on all the content that we've been talking about, you can also go, I have a TV section. So I've made a lot of television appearances, and you can go and get quick tips for gardening and food.
Nice.
Right there, you can watch them live.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/gardening hacks. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Growing plants that thrive in your yard is a lot easier than you think. It starts with saving your own seeds and letting them remember what they already learned. Just text SEEDS to 33444 or visit iwanttosaveseeds.com and you will receive our free webinar about why seeds matter, why saving them is easy, and how to save your own.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.